Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for dropping by this video. Um, just want to take a moment and invite the remembrance of the presence of higher power, however you define it. God, Allah, Spirit, Brahman, Buddha mind, and our very dear friend Christ, who I'm convinced is always with us and always with everyone, actually. So I got an amazing comment that I love, and I want to break it down a little bit. Someone wrote, I made a video talking about being guided by God, and someone wrote, guided by God means being able to murder who he tells you. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to continue reading. It means being okay with a divine being requires infant genital mutilation of any people. Love it. Love this comment. Love this question. So, I'll break it down. Being guided by God means being willing to murder who he tells you to. So, I would present the idea that being guided by God means being willing to do whatever the divine asks of you. Might the divine ask you to murder someone? I don't know. I've never had it's quite a fascinating theological and ethical question. Is murder ever in harmony with the divine will? It's not a question I'm able to answer. I would very clearly, to defend someone, I would very clearly take someone else's life to protect my own life. I would maybe not so easily, but I'd be willing to take another life. Does that mean it's God's will? I don't know. But so the process that I'm talking about, being guided by God, might be a little different than what you've encountered or what you're thinking. So let me tell you my understanding. So my understanding of being guided by God is following your feelings and discerning which thoughts are true and which thoughts are not true. This is very important because spiritual and religious people throughout history have heard a voice speaking to them that they thought was God and acted on that voice without first ever discerning, was that actually true? Was that actually the voice of God? And of course, it can get really crazy really quick. The interesting thing is, though, is the same thing applies to people who don't believe in God. We all hear a voice in our head, right? But the example I was giving is kind of this external voice, which some people do hear, and some people do hear it and it's insane, and some people do hear it and it actually gives good guidance. A couple times I've heard a voice externally that's given clear guidance. A couple times I've heard a voice externally that gave very bad guidance. But let's look at people who don't believe in a higher power. See, the thing is moment by moment, everyone is guided. I'm guided, you're guided, every single human being on this planet is guided in every moment. The question is, what are they guided by? All of us generally are guided by our thoughts and our feelings. Don't believe me? Next time you're on the computer and then you stop and you go and eat, take a moment and reflect. And what you'll find is you were on the computer and you had the thought, oh, it's time to eat, or oh, I'm hungry, I want some food. And inwardly, you either said yes or no to that thought. If you said no to that thought, then you kept on working. If you said yes to that thought, then you got up and ate. Most people I've met mostly are running on automatic. They have a thought and they act on it. This requires careful self-observation. Before pretty much every decision, every action, there's a thought that someone says yes to and then they do it, or someone says no to. Where do these thoughts come from? Well, according to Bruno Gröning, the most Christ-like being I've ever heard of, who I just have absolute trust in his teaching. Well, not absolute, but absolute respect, deep, deep respect. He said thoughts have two sources, that it either comes from God, the good, who he defined as love, life, goodness, harmony, or it literally comes from evil. And we'll talk more in this channel what evil is and what it isn't. But even the strictest atheist all day long is being guided. All day long, they're getting thoughts that if they follow, those thoughts will lead to what's good. And if they don't, there are other thoughts, if they follow, it'll lead to what's harmful. So so that's just kind of moment by moment. But a more structured version of this was taught by the Oxford group, an amazing, amazing group that in essence said, look, religion needs to be practical. And they taught people how to listen and hear and discern the voice of God. And it's very simple. You need to start off with a simple question, like, what should I do today? And then you just start writing, and you write every single thought that comes. You don't censor a single thought, no matter how beautiful or how crazy. Then afterwards, you go through and you check in with yourself. Which thoughts seem right? Which thoughts seem not right? And of course, that's a process. It takes time to learn it. And over time, you'll be amazed at the inspiration you get. There's a beautiful article called How to Listen to God. You Google How to Listen to God, Oxford group, and I'll post this right. I'm posting it in the chat box. It's a life-changing brochure. Many people have had their lives changed by this simple, because most people don't know that you can be guided by God, or they just like pray and nothing happens. But this is a very clear method for how to receive divine guidance. And so back to the original post. Being guided by God means you are okay with a divine being requiring ritual infant genital mutilation of any people. Not for me, it doesn't. So that's not being guided by God. That's being guided by a book. Very different. Most people, it's interesting. This is most clearly highlighted in the religion of Islam. Islam means the peace that comes from surrender to God. That's literally what the word Islam means. It's a combination of two words, surrender and peace, that surrendering to God brings peace. However, the religion of Islam translates in not translates. The religion of Islam has become, well, the peace that comes from surrendering to God comes through following various holy books, including the Quran, the Hadith, and the Surah. Most people have only heard of the Quran, but so much of Islam is actually based on two other books, the Hadith and the Surah. And so that is a prime example of what religion is. I believe Muhammad taught people how to be guided by God. And some way, somehow, after he was gone, well, not some way, somehow, this happens pretty much all the time, people twisted it into a set of rules that then you have to follow. One moment, I'm looking up something. And so that's what religion is. A set of rules that you read in a book and then you're supposed to follow. Very, very different from being guided by God. Very, very different. And, even in the Quran, it actually says this. And of course, it says this in the Bible. It says, it's written that Jesus said, not all those who call on my name, I think it's will be saved or are my brothers and sisters, but those who do the will of my Father. I'm paraphrasing here. I think I'm combining two verses, but the essence of the same is it's not about following a book. It's not about following a set of rules in a book. It's about being guided. And interestingly enough, part of being guided by God is learning how to recognize religious BS. For example, ritual genital mutilation. It's not just BS, it's horrible. It's terrible. The most sensitive part of a newborn child's body is supposed to be cut. It's insane. It's pure insanity. And so part of it is about becoming fearless, because most of us have been taught wrongly that if you don't follow a particular religion, you're going to spend an eternity in hell. But so that's where we need to break things down. And it's like, well, who said that? So in essence, what you have is people saying that God said something, but that's like two people removed. That's not just a middleman, that's a middle man. So I hope this was helpful. I love the comment. Thank you so much for dropping by to this person. And I wish everyone a beautiful day of being guided by the divine.